Do we have to sell our souls to make the art that we really want to make? We're going to talk about that today. My name is Rob Guillory, and I'm a comic book creator, and the purpose of my channel is to encourage, inspire, and I hope give insight into the strange world of comics. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back for another episode. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about the Illuminati and how we all have to sell our souls to have any kind of success in the entertainment industry. Obviously, that is not what we're talking about today, but we've all heard that before, right? We've all heard that to be successful in whatever creative venture, especially if it's music, television, that sort of thing, at some point you're going to be at some creepy party, possibly with P. Diddy. You're going to be taken into a dark corner of the room and be made an offer that you can't refuse, and you're going to have to, basically to move forward in your industry, you're going to have to participate in something really gross to sign a deal with the devil and move forward and progress. We've all heard this before. This is kind of like a stereotype, this interesting trope. Maybe it's true, I don't know. It's one of my favorite conspiracy theories. Who knows? I think there's something behind that we need to talk about. I think that we tend to think that to really attain any kind of real success, to really break through in our chosen craft, to have any kind of widespread appeal, we're going to have to sign something away. We're going to have to compromise. And we're always waiting. That's a big part of the reason we tend to be very suspicious of corporations, of big money people who come to the table and make us offers. And frankly, I've also been that way in my career as well. As I said before, when I got into comics, my goal was simply to make comics. I wasn't trying to make movies. I wasn't trying to make TV shows, any of that stuff. I was just an introvert who really liked drawing. I liked spending time alone, telling stories. And then, surprisingly, all of this interest from fairly high levels kind of comes your way. And a lot of comic creators, particularly, especially in the last 20 years, have seen that. We all kind of got into this with the simplest intentions. And who knew that there would be this broad cultural appeal that kind of comes out of nowhere, sideswipes us, and ends up with us signing contracts that sometimes aren't in our best interest. And more often than not, this issue of compromise, which is what I want to talk about today, this idea of we have to compromise our values in order to achieve the things we want to achieve. I have found that though there is something to that on a high level, when you're dealing with Hollywood, when you're dealing with larger entities that want to, they want to license your property, they want to go do something with it and build something with it, there can be the pressure to compromise. That does happen. And I've experienced that to some degree. But what I've found is far more common for most people is that you will face this kind of this issue of compromise, this issue of how do I keep my values intact? How do I stay true to myself while also making work in a public space, making work with people, which is really, most art is collaborative in some sense. You're going to have to navigate how you make the art you want to make while being sensitive to the people around you, whether that's clients or whether that's collaborators. And it's really in those two spheres, with clients and with collaborators. Those are the areas where I think we tackle this the most, where we face this sort of rub, where we bring our own values, we bring what is important to us to the table, and we have boundaries, we have lines that we don't want to cross. Now, everyone's line is going to be different. When I was just starting out, I was in my early 20s when I was starting out in comics. I didn't have a lot of lines. I was really just here for the art. I was just I was in love with the act of making things. So I didn't have a lot of lines. But as I got older, I started discovering myself, discovering what was truly important to me. And I started discovering that there actually were moral lines I was unwilling to cross. There were some things I wouldn't draw. There's certain things I wasn't interested in writing or being a part of. So you bring that to the table as a creator. You have your own set of boundaries and moral values that you bring to the table. But when you're dealing with a client and you're dealing with a collaborator, a creative partner, they're going to bring their own stuff to the table as well. And especially when it comes to dealing with corporations, they're going to bring agendas. They're going to bring certain broader interest that they're going to try to influence you and get you to sort of do what they want you to do. And that's where the rub comes in. So how do we avoid that? Because the temptation is to, the conflict, the tension tends to be, I have my values, I want to stay true to them. But there is an opportunity over here. There is money attached to this. There are connections attached to this. There's a doorway that if I get to walk through this doorway, it opens up an entirely new realm of opportunity. So that's the tension. Do we take the opportunities or do we stay true to ourselves? And how do we navigate that? So let's talk about that. What are some simple ways that I have found have been helpful in navigating this, staying true to my values while also trying to grow and thrive in my creative ventures? So the first thing I think is you have to be clear about what your values are. What are the non-negotiables in your moral values? What are the things that are the most important to you value-wise? What are the places you won't touch? Why is that? You need to be clear about what you actually believe. So for me, there's certain things that certain avenues I won't go down. So obviously I make some material that is a bit more mature content-wise, some kind of horror stuff that I think my wheelhouse tends to be, I would say, late high school to adult tends to be where I skew. But at the same time, I've had people offer me things like essentially softcore porn that I have turned down because it's just not the work I want to make. I want to make stuff. That's not my thing. That's not where I want to go with my work. So I've turned that stuff down, turned those checks down because it's not in line with my values. So that's the first step. Be clear with yourself about where those values are. Secondly, you need to be clear with other people about where your values are. I think the biggest headache, the biggest long-term problem that I've seen people hit, myself included, in the early years of my career was because I was so afraid to lose a gig and lose the opportunity and miss out on a paycheck, you sort of compromise in the immediate. And then over time, maybe you'll hit a wall and you'll say, well, I don't want to cross this line. But by that point, you've compromised. Like your client or your collaborator knows you as a person with no issues. You're okay with crossing all these lines. You've never been clear with them about where you stand on certain things. And I think that can cause a big problem and a large headache in the long term. Now, that doesn't mean being clear with other people does not necessarily mean giving them a list of like everything. Like, here's everything I believe and everything I don't believe, everything I'm for and everything I'm against. I don't think it's that. I think that, again, this goes back to being really real with people about who you are, being transparent, and sharing, being open enough with them to show them who you are. A lot of my career right now is a lot of phone calls. A lot of the projects I am developing by way of phone calls, of Zoom calls, of talking to people, whether that's in comics, whether that's in other places like television or whatever. We're having conversations because it's a relationship. All of this stuff, whether it's with a client or a collaborator, it is ultimately relational. And there has to be some level of common ground to build something on top of that. Now, that does not mean you have to completely align on everything. That's impossible. But there have to be enough shared values that you can come together in this it is sort of like a marriage. It is sort of like a coming together of two parties to create something. There have to be enough common grounds, common values that you can build the work upon. If that is not there, if your collaborator, your client has values that are in direct opposition to who you are and they want to put that into the work, that's going to be a problem because effectively at that point, you're two parties rowing in completely different directions. You're not going to get anywhere. You have to, even if you differ in certain areas, you have to have a common agreement and enough common ground to move forward in whatever you're doing. So that's it. Be clear with others. Be clear with yourself. It just avoids a lot of headache. And also the next thing is you need, and this is a no-brainer to most people, but people don't do this. The next thing is you need to read every contract. You need to read every single contract that comes your way. You have to know what's in the contract. And yes, having a lawyer, having an entertainment lawyer, a legal entity who knows this stuff helps, absolutely. But you need to learn how to read contracts. You need to see what's in there and make sure that what is in there before you sign it, that it is something that you're okay with signing. Corporations or your clients or whoever it is, they're going to get away with as much as they can get away with. They're going to push you as much as you allow them to push you. At some point, you have to kind of take a stand and say, these points are good, but this thing, this little clause right here, I'm not okay with. And that's when we have to push back. That's when you have to kind of take a stand and say, well, I'll go this far, but I'm not willing to go this far. We have to take a stand in it, and part of that is knowing who we're getting into bed with, knowing what is in the contract, what are the terms, am I comfortable with them, am I not comfortable with them? If you're not comfortable with them, I think you have to have a serious conversation about whether or not this gig is right for you or not. Frankly, to be honest with you, most of the conversations I've had in regards to contracts, most of the time I'll look at them, and if I find something in them that isn't quite right for me, that I have sort of a check on, I've found that pushing back on it's not that big a deal. I've found that most clients or most studios or whatever publishers, most of the time, if you push back on it and you have your reasons, most times they kind of cave on them. It's most of my clients, most of the times I push back, the revisions were very easy to make. It wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't a big battle of wills. It was just, I think a lot of creators don't push. They don't ask for what they actually want, and as a result, they end up stuck in a situation they don't want to be in. Read your contracts and do not be afraid to push back. Lastly, you have to be willing to lose projects. You have to be willing to lose clients, and you have to be willing to miss out on certain opportunities. Again, I know this is scary. It was scary for me coming up as well. When I was very, very young in this industry, when you're really, really hungry, you'll bite on every single opportunity. So everything that came my way, I was trying to jump on that thing and make it into something, because who knows what it could turn into. But as you get older, as I've gotten older, the more I've seen that some opportunities are just not for me. Some clients are just not for me. Some projects are just not for me, and I have to be okay with it. So I'm no longer focused on getting every opportunity or every client. I'm looking for the right ones. I'm looking for the ones that want me to be who I am, who aren't going to ask me to do something or be something I am not. Because there's nothing integrous about that. If anything, if you're saying you believe a certain thing, but you are over here doing something that is in direct opposition to what you say, you are not being integrous. That is the definition of disintegration. You are literally coming apart because you're living two different ways at the same time. So the goal is integration. The goal is integrity. The goal is be what you say you are. So that's really the goal. So when you do that, when you draw these lines and you say, I won't go here, that will naturally that will sift people. That will sift people in your life. That will sift clients. That will sift projects. Certain people will not come around because they know what you represent. They know who you are. Some of that can be scary because there's a level of rejection in that. But it ends up being a really good thing in the end. Namely, in my case, people tend to know who I am. After 15, 20 years in the industry, they kind of know what I do. They know where I am at on certain things. And even with this YouTube channel, the more I speak and I say where I'm at on things, the more I've found that I've been attracting the right people. The people who've been emailing me and even the potential projects that have been offered to me since doing this YouTube channel have been more catered to me because I've been very, very clear about where I am. I hate to use this word, but branding, this is part of the brand. So your integrity and your values are part of your brand. And you don't want to put out there you don't want to show people the wrong face. You don't want to show them a representation of you that is untrue, because if they see that and it's not who you really are, they're going to think that's who you are. And they're going to make you offers based on that. And it's not going to be right for you because it's based on a faulty view of who you are. So you need to be integrous in all these things. That's really the takeaway from all of this is you need to know who you are. You need to know what you believe. You need to know what are the things closest to you. It doesn't really benefit you to have all of this success, to have all of these opportunities, if in the process you essentially lose who you are in the process. It doesn't help you. I think the verse is, what does it gain you to gain the entire world and lose your soul in the process? I think there's some truth to that. At the end of the day, it's great being successful. It's great moving forward in your chosen venture, your chosen industry. But at your core, you need to be okay with you. You need to be okay. You need to be able to sleep at night. And you need to be okay with the decisions you've made in your career and the projects that you put your energies into. So that's my concern. You don't want to build something for yourself that you don't even want to live in. You want to build a house for yourself, a creative house, a professional house, a life that actually represents you, that is right for you. So that's about it. That's it for this week. This is it can be a little heady, but it really is as simple as just being clear on where your lines are. If you're afraid of compromising who you are and kind of selling out yourself for a paycheck, well, that's in your control. You get to control what gigs you take, and you get to control where the lines are. This is completely within your control. So, but again, this is going to take some reflection. It's going to take some intention, some strategy, but you can do it. I mean, we do this all the time. So, but I think this is the one area that I don't really hear a lot of people talk about as creatives, but it is a temptation when you're, especially when your livelihood is baked into it. When you're trying to pay your bills, the temptation is take every gig that comes your way. But the reality is, sometimes it's not in your best interest to take that. Not every paycheck is a good paycheck. So I hope this is helpful to you guys. This is just my 2 cents. Let me know in the comments section where you guys are on this. Have you ever taken a gig that you regretted taking in the long term? Maybe it paid you great in the immediate, but it ended up being a bad deal for you in the long term. Let me know. I want to hear from you. As always, like, share, subscribe. I appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, this community has been growing, and it's been amazing to watch. Some really good conversations going on coming from this show. So I appreciate it. I hope you have a great week. I hope it's productive. I hope it is peaceful, as always. And I will see you next week. Bye.